What if I told you a 21-year-old nursing student crashed her car on a dark New Hampshire road and vanished into thin air before police arrived?
It sounds like the setup to a modern horror story, doesn't it? But, I mean, the reality is that the events around Maura Murray's disappearance are just so much stranger and honestly more tragic than any fiction.
Right.
You have this young college student, and she's dealing with this severe mounting cascade of personal crises, and her last known actions were just baffling.
The email to her professors.
Exactly. Emailing them, claiming she would be gone for a week because of a death in the family, a death that never actually happened. It was just this immediate, desperate act of flight.
Absolutely. The tension, it really starts building even before she gets to that crash site on Route 112. You can see she's planning this quick, urgent escape. But we still have no idea who, if anyone, knew where she was going.
Or why? Why the consequences of staying just completely outweighed the risks of vanishing.
And that desperation, that's what still haunts this mystery.
Maura Murray was last seen at 7:30 p.m. on February 9, 2004. 21 years later, no one knows what happened.
And what really sets this case apart, beyond the unbelievable tragedy for her family, is that it became the first major disappearance of the social media age.
That's a great point. It's a mystery that was born in those dark woods, but it was raised online.
Yeah, where all these amateur sleuths and swirling rumors have, on one hand, kept the spotlight on her, but on the other, they've severely complicated the actual investigation.
Welcome to Whispers of Crime.
Before we really get into the timeline of that fateful day, just take a moment to subscribe to Whispers of Crime on YouTube. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and, well, all the major podcast platforms.
If you find this story as compelling as we do, please like, share, and comment. It really helps us reach more people who need to hear Maura's story, and it helps keep this case active.
Okay, so let's start by setting the scene. To really understand why Maura made the choices she did on February 9th, we have to look at the immense pressure she was under.
It's everything. Maura Murray was born May 4th, 1982, in Brockton, Massachusetts. And by all accounts, she was highly competitive, exceptionally smart.
A high achiever.
Absolutely. That high-achieving perfectionist profile is so crucial to understanding her state of mind. I mean, she started her academic career as a cadet at the prestigious West Point Military Academy.
A place that demands, what, rigid discipline, perfection, and just absolute adherence to the rules.
Total adherence. And she excelled there, too. She was known to be gifted in math. She was a very strong runner on the cross-country and track teams.
I remember reading her sister Julie Murray recalled the insane preparation it required. Maura apparently memorized the entire plebe knowledge booklet before she even started.
See? That's the perfectionist mindset right there. But that kind of stringent environment just wasn't a sustainable fit for her. It really seems like Maura was pushing back against all those constraints.
And the high expectations, maybe.
And the high expectations. We see this coming out in these little disciplinary incidents, things like underage drinking, and there was even a really minor sort of petty incident involving lipstick theft.
Lipstick theft.
At West Point.
Yeah. I mean, these are small acts, but they suggest this maybe subconscious desire to just break free from that military path.
And she did break free. She left West Point, transferred to UMass Amherst to get a nursing degree. She was a junior.
Right. And on the surface, that transfer gave her more personal freedom.
Yeah.
But it did absolutely nothing to reduce the physical or mental workload.
She was still juggling a full, demanding nursing course load.
And working two separate campus jobs on top of it all. It was just a different kind of pressure cooker.
So she traded the pressure of military conformity for the pressure of academic rigor, financial strain, and trying to keep it all together.
Exactly. And that strain, it was starting to show. It was beginning to translate into serious, actionable legal trouble.
There are two key incidents that really show her life was starting to spin out of control. The first one was in July 2003. All right, the speeding ticket.
A speeding ticket in Hooksett, New Hampshire. Which sounds minor, but the administrative consequence of it was enormous.
It was huge. Her license became suspended in New Hampshire. And critically, to get it back, she needed to reinstate it in person and pay an outstanding fee.
So on February 9th, 2004, the day she disappeared, the simple act of her driving in New Hampshire, the very place she was heading, was literally illegal.
She was risking immediate arrest and, further legal consequences. This fact alone makes her refusal to interact with police at the crash site make a lot more sense. It was panicked, but it was rational.
And then the pressure just ratchets up. November 2003.
This is a big one. She was hit with a credit card fraud charge that was pending at UMass. She got caught in a sting operation after charging pizza, I think, to someone else's account.
Now, when the police confronted her, she owned up to it immediately.
She did. And she was given 3 months of probation, but it was contingent on good behavior.
Okay, let's stop there. Probation contingent on good behavior. For a young woman trying to become a nurse, what does that actually mean?
It's a career killer. I mean, for a professional degree like nursing, a felony or even a misdemeanor conviction, especially one that involves dishonesty like fraud, it could permanently derail her career, prevent her from getting licensed.
So by February 2004, she was one wrong move, one traffic stop, one minor issue away from violating that probation.
And facing jail time and ruining her entire professional future.
The fear of that must have been a paralyzing weight. I mean, way more terrifying than just having to face her parents about it.
Oh, absolutely. That fear, you combine it with the shame, the need to maintain that perfect, high-achieving facade, it set the stage perfectly. And then we get to the emotional collapse point just days before she fled.
The final 4 days.
Yeah.
Just this cascading series of personal traumas.
It started on Thursday, February 5th, 2004. Maura was at her campus security job. She gets a phone call.
It was from her older sister, Kathleen.
Right. And Kathleen was struggling severely with alcoholism and had just relapsed after being discharged from rehab that very same evening.
How devastating must that call have been? Just witnessing her sister's struggle from so far away, feeling helpless.
And what's so heartbreaking about this call is the sheer depth of the reaction it triggered in Maura. She broke down at her desk around 10:30 that night.
Her supervisor found her.
Her supervisor later described finding her in his almost catatonic state. He said she was completely zoned out, shaking visibly while crying silently, and just utterly unresponsive.
And when he asked what was wrong,
She could only manage to whisper 2 words, "My sister."
So when you look at the timeline, was Kathleen's relapse the cause of Maura's breakdown, or was it just the final straw, the thing that finally broke the dam?
It was undeniably the catalyst that shattered her control. She was already juggling the legal risk, the academic demand, the financial pressure. The sister's relapse was this overwhelming emotional trauma she felt powerless to fix.
And it was the moment that the facade finally just fractured.
It moved her from a state of sustained pressure to one of immediate emotional crisis.
And then, just 2 days later, Saturday, February 7th, the physical stress catches up.
Maura crashed her father's Toyota sedan near her dorm after a party. And this was not a minor fender bender.
No, it was a major accident. The damage was estimated somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000.
That's essentially totaling the car. So now, on top of everything else, she's financially responsible for 2 jobs, facing legal jeopardy, and she's just caused massive financial damage to her father's property.
Sources say she expressed this immense, profound guilt to her father over this accident, told him the situation was the worst possible outcome.
So in the span of just 4 days, from February 5th to the 9th, she experiences the trauma of her sister's relapse. She totals her dad's car. She's already on probation for fraud. She's driving illegally. And she's dealing with a complicated long-distance relationship with her boyfriend, Billy Rausch.
That entire profile just screams urgent, immediate flight response.
Absolutely. She wasn't booking a planned vacation. She needed to disappear immediately, if only for a few days, to clear her head and escape the consequences. Or at least that's what she was trying to do.
That urgency brings us directly to Monday, February 9th, the day she fled. Her actions that afternoon, they weren't manic or random.
No, they were calculated steps, part of a plan of immediate, desperate deception.
We can track it starting midday at 1:24 p.m.
She sends that email to her work supervisor, claims she'll be out of town for a week due to a false death in the family.
A lie that bought her time, since her family quickly confirmed no one had died.
Right. And she also used that afternoon to pack up her dorm room.
But what's really remarkable is the planning that happened even earlier, just after midnight that same morning, before she even sent the email.
Yeah, she was on MapQuest, searching for directions to 2 distinct yet familiar areas, the Berkshires and Burlington, Vermont.
And she followed that up with phone calls, right? Inquiring about renting accommodations in Stowe, Vermont, and a condominium in Bartlett, New Hampshire.
Bartlett. That's a specific, crucial detail. Her father mentioned they vacation and camped there frequently.
So she knew the area.
She knew it well. But if she had been planning this trip for weeks, she probably would have already had a place booked. The fact that she's making these research calls hours before she leaves, but makes no confirmed reservations.
It just reinforces that this was a hurried, last-minute trip fueled by panic.
Totally improvised.
Mhm.
Now, the most perplexing clues about what she was thinking, they lie in what she packed versus what she left behind.
She left a personal note for her boyfriend, Billy Roush.
And she took her textbooks, which strongly suggests she fully intended to return to school and keep up with her studies. That's a clear signal of future intention.
But the list of things she abandoned just completely contradicts the idea of a long-term absence.
It really does. She left behind critical daily essentials, her birth control pills, her daily hygiene items like toothpaste and deodorant, an acne cleanser.
It's complete dichotomy. Why on earth would you take heavy, awkward textbooks, which symbolize future commitment, but leave behind health essentials and daily toiletries?
It's so strange. If she really planned a full week away, leaving her medication and hygiene products behind is just highly improbable.
So what's the consensus there? What do analysts think that means?
The general feeling is that the abandoned items suggest she only expected to be gone for a very short period, maybe 2 days, a couple of days before the end of the week she lied about.
So she was running away from an immediate catastrophe, not running to a new life somewhere.
Exactly. This brings us to the logistics of her departure in Massachusetts, starting with getting money and supplies.
3:15 p.m. The ATM.
Surveillance footage captures Maura withdrawing $280. This was nearly her entire bank balance at the time.
And the footage shows she was alone, wearing a light-colored jacket, dark pants.
Right. But the exact timestamp of that withdrawal immediately became controversial. Some of the initial witness reports placed the time closer to 3:4 p.m.
And that disputed 25-minute gap, that's one of the first really confusing elements in the official timeline, isn't it?
It is. Where did she go if the 3:15 p.m. time is accurate before she got to the liquor store? Was she meeting someone? Or was this just a simple discrepancy in the surveillance camera's clock? We don't know.
What we do know is she went to a liquor store, Liquors 44, shortly after that.
And this wasn't just a quick grab-and-go transaction. She first redeemed 79 cans and bottles for a small sum like $3.95.
And then she purchased about $40 worth of alcohol, Bailey's Irish Cream, Kahlua vodka, and a box of Franzia wine.
Surveillance confirmed she was completely alone during this transaction.
That is a significant amount of alcohol for what's supposed to be a short, solitary trip. It points right back to that emotional crisis.
And the potential reliance on self-medication as a coping mechanism, yeah. It fuels the idea that this voluntary flight was driven by high distress and potential intoxication.
And here is where another deeply unsettling layer comes in. Something that adds this enormous urgency and complexity to why she might have fled.
The internet search.
At some point that day, she searched online for directions to Vermont and for the effects of drinking on an unborn child.
That search just opens up a whole separate, overwhelming source of panic that may have been compounding her existing legal and emotional distress.
Right. If she was dealing with a potential unplanned pregnancy on top of everything else in her life, the desire to escape, to process, to self-medicate, it becomes amplified tenfold.
It creates this powerful triple threat motivation to vanish. Fear of legal consequences, shame over the car crash and family trauma, and an immediate, profound personal health crisis.
Her last known movement in Massachusetts involved preparing for a potential run-in with the police.
She picked up blank accident report forms. This confirms she was actively planning how to deal with the consequences of that February 7th crash.
And reinforces the need to avoid police interaction at all costs.
She left Amherst sometime between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m., heading north, probably on I-91. Her last recorded cell phone use was her checking her voicemail at 4:37 p.m. Her destination, to anyone but herself, was a complete mystery.
Before we track more into that crash site, let's just pause for a second.
Don't forget to subscribe to Whispers of Crime on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and all major podcast platforms.
We really do rely on your engagement, so please like, share, and comment on our look into this case. It helps us reach more people who need to hear Maura's story, and it helps keep the pressure on for answers.
The atmosphere changes so drastically now. We're shifting from the planned panic steps of her departure to the chaotic, rapid sequence of events hours later.
Nearly 130 miles north on a remote, dark New Hampshire road. This is where the timeline just accelerates into that terrifying, critical 9-minute window that is still the crux of this entire mystery.
The accident happened at 7:27 p.m. on New Hampshire Route 112. It's also called Wild Ammonoosuc Road near Woodsville. This area is intensely rural, heavily wooded.
And known for sharp turns and very low visibility at night, especially in February with all the snow.
Her black 1996 Saturn sedan was found up against a snowbank at a sharp hairpin curve. It was facing the wrong way on the eastbound side of the road.
And the vehicle had clear damage. The hood was buckled, the radiator was bent, and the windshield was cracked.
With some reports suggesting that the crack actually originated from the inside, possibly from a head injury.
A local resident, Faith Westman, heard a loud thump.
And she called 911 at 7:27 p.m. But the initial 911 log, it instantly created confusion. It noted that Westman claimed to have seen a man smoking a cigarette inside the car.
That sounds like a definitive early piece of evidence. But Westman later changed her story.
She did. She clarified that she had not seen a man, but instead a red light glowing inside the car, maybe from a cell phone or possibly a cigarette ember.
That early ambiguity, it's such a common pitfall in cold cases, isn't it? Especially when visibility is so low.
It is. But moments later, we get the last confirmed encounter with Maura, and this gives us some clarity about her immediate emotional state.
This was the encounter with Butch Atwood. He was a passing motorist, a school bus driver who lived about 500 feet away.
He stopped at the scene, and he saw Maura walking around the car. He described her as visibly cold and shivering, but she seemed to be physically uninjured.
This interaction is absolutely central to everything. Atwood offered to call for help.
Maura, however, refused. She pleaded with him not to call the police. She falsely claimed she had already contacted AAA.
Which was impossible. There was no cell service in that specific stretch of Route 112, and AAA had no record of any such call.
Her extreme reaction, pleading with a Good Samaritan not to involve the authorities, it just underlines the catastrophic consequences she felt she was facing if the police showed up.
Right. If they found her driving illegally, possibly intoxicated, and involved in a major accident while she was on probation.
So Atwood, respecting her refusal but also recognizing the danger, drove home just 500 feet and called the police himself at 7:43 p.m. It's the minutes between him leaving and the official police arrival that are just terrifyingly critical.
And this is where the timeline completely fractures. This leads us to the famous ghost car discrepancy.
A local resident known as Witness A, a social worker named Karen, claimed she passed the scene around 7:37 p.m.
And critically, she claimed she saw a dark, maybe unmarked, police SUV parked nose-to-nose with Maura's Saturn.
This account places an official-looking vehicle at the scene up to 9 minutes before Officer Smith actually arrived at 7:46 p.m.
Okay, so if Maura was desperate to avoid the police, and a dark SUV that looks like a cruiser shows up 10 minutes before the officially logged officer, how would she have reacted?
That's the million-dollar question. Would she have panicked and fled into the woods, or would she have, maybe against her better judgment, or maybe she was coerced, willingly gotten into that unauthorized vehicle to evade the immediate trouble of the crash?
Investigators have generally dismissed Karen's account.
They have. They've attributed the sighting to either misidentification, maybe she mistook Atwood's bus or another vehicle, or a simple error in her timing, preferring the official log.
But the fact remains that Witness A was adamant, and the potential existence of an unmarked police presence or just a predatory civilian driving a similar car, it complicates the whole idea of Maura just fleeing on foot.
The vanishing act had to have happened in that roughly 9-minute window, between Atwood leaving around 7:37 p.m. and Officer Smith's official arrival at 7:46 p.m. That short time frame makes a successful rapid interaction with a waiting motorist highly plausible.
When Officer Smith finally arrives at 7:46 p.m., the black Saturn was locked, Maura was gone, and the scene was silent.
The only secondary sighting came later. A contractor reported seeing a young person, maybe Maura, walking east on Route 112 between 8:00 p.m. several minutes after the car was found abandoned.
So Officer Smith secures the scene. He looks inside the abandoned Saturn. And the inventory of what he finds, it provides this stark, chaotic snapshot of Maura's mindset in those final frantic moments.
The immediate evidence pointed directly to her primary motive for fleeing, avoiding a DWI.
He found red stains that looked like wine, both inside and outside the car.
Yep.
And on the rear seat was an empty beer bottle and the damaged half-empty box of Franzia wine she had bought earlier.
Okay, so she bought Bailey's, Kahlua, vodka, and the Franzia. If only a Franzia box and one beer bottle were there, what happened to the rest of the liquor?
It's a crucial question. Was she drinking heavily as she drove? Was she already intoxicated before she even left Amherst? The assumption is she was consuming alcohol rapidly.
What else was in there?
Also found were those blank accident report forms, her AAA card, the driving directions to Burlington, Vermont, and a book titled Not without peril.
Not without peril. That detail is so compelling. It's a book about survival stories of people who struggled and sometimes died while mountain climbing in the White Mountains.
Is it symbolism? I mean, reflecting her own feeling of fighting this losing battle against the mounting pressures in her life? Or is it just a coincidence? It certainly speaks to her state of mind.
And what was missing? Her debit card, credit cards, and her cell phone were all gone. None of them have ever been located or used since she disappeared. This points strongly to her fleeing with the absolute essentials she thought she needed for a getaway.
It reinforces the idea of a voluntary, quick departure from the scene.
Yes. But then you have the bizarre, highly debated detail that truly cemented this case in true crime lore, the mystery of the rag in the tailpipe.
A dish towel or some kind of rag was discovered jammed tightly into the Saturn's muffler pipe.
And this small, intentional detail has fueled 2 decades of speculation because it's so obviously intentional yet so bizarre. We should probably analyze the 4 main theories here.
Yeah. Theory 1. Highly plausible. DUI concealment.
Right. Maura's father, Fred Murray, has publicly suggested this. He said he had previously told his daughter that if a car were acting strangely, say emitting smoke, you could use a rag to plug the exhaust to simulate a mechanical issue.
And distract the police from other potential issues, like being intoxicated.
Exactly. It would be a rational, calculated action by a panicked, legally compromised person trying to avoid arrest.
Okay. Theory 2. Post-crash cleanup and disposal.
This one suggests Maura may have used the rag to quickly mop up the spilling wine inside the car, and then, in her haste to flee before police arrived, she just shoved the wine-soaked rag into the tailpipe to quickly hide the evidence.
That makes sense, too. What about the third, more sensationalized theory? The suicide attempt.
This one suggests placing the rag there to cause carbon monoxide poisoning, but this theory is given very low plausibility because Maura immediately got out of the car and walked away. It argues against any attempt to asphyxiate herself inside the car.
And finally, external sabotage or foul play.
Yeah, this theory suggests an external actor, maybe the ghost car driver, placed the rag there after the crash. Perhaps to disable the car further or to stage the scene to make it look like a drunk driver fled.
But the forensics on that.
Well, forensic analysis suggests that if the car was driven for any significant distance with the rag fully stuffed inside, the engine would have stalled pretty quickly. That lends more credence to Maura or someone else in the immediate aftermath placing it there.
So beyond the rag, there were these significant forensic discrepancies about whether the car could even be driven, complicating the whole reason for fleeing. Police claimed the car hit a tree or a snowbank hard enough to be inoperable.
But a private analysis, one commissioned by her family later, suggested something different. They argued the damage to the hood and radiator was not consistent with hitting a solid object like a large tree.
And critically, they claimed the car was, in fact, drivable.
Drivable, though severely damaged, and this is a massive point of contention.
If the car was drivable, why abandon it right there on the roadside where it's guaranteed to attract police attention?
The simplest answer is still that overwhelming legal risk we talked about. She was driving on a suspended license, she was likely intoxicated, she was facing a probation violation.
The fear of jail time and the absolute ruin of her nursing career prospects. That provided extreme, immediate motivation to flee, even from a car that could still move.
She was running from consequences that she likely saw as career-ending and life-altering. Her immediate priority was just putting distance between herself and that approaching police cruiser.
Moving past the night of the disappearance, we enter into these 2 decades of frustration, of a lack of closure, and this often confusing, staggered investigation that followed.
And the investigative failures started almost immediately.
Despite all the snow on the ground, no footprints were definitively found leading into the dense woods around the crash site.
That remains an astonishing fact, especially if you assume she fled on foot into the wilderness. Initial searches, including a massive grid search in July 2004 once the snow melted, they failed to find Maura, her clothing, or the black backpack she was known to have with her.
How is that possible? How can a young adult, possibly carrying a backpack and personal items, disappear so completely from a crashed car without leaving any tracks in the snow? Especially if the main theory is she just walked away and succumbed to the elements.
The lack of tracks suggests 2 main possibilities. Either the snow just wasn't right for retaining prints in that immediate area, or
She got into a vehicle almost immediately.
right, meaning she was only on the roadside for seconds or minutes before being driven away.
The investigative classification of the case changed over time, didn't it? It reflects how difficult it's been to prove either theory.
It does. The case was eventually transferred to the New Hampshire Cold Case Unit in 2009 and officially classified as suspicious.
The word suspicious is incredibly telling.
It is. It hints at this internal recognition that this wasn't just a simple case of a lost person or someone who left voluntarily. There was something unsettling about the circumstances that pointed toward external involvement or foul play.
It's also important to remember that early on, police dismissed any connections to the disappearance of Brianna Maitland.
Which happened just a month later, only 66 miles away in Vermont.
So moving into the modern analysis, nearly 2 decades into the case, the FBI created a Violent Criminal Apprehension Profile, or VICAP, in 2022.
This is a pivotal strategic shift. It demonstrates that the official stance has moved dramatically away from the exposure theory.
What exactly is VICAP used for?
VICAP is a nationwide database and analysis tool that's used to track and link cases involving violent serial offenders, things like highway serial killings or abductions.
So what does the timing of this, 18 years after she disappeared, and the use of VICAP, what does that imply about what investigators are thinking now?
It implies that the authorities have, for the most part, exhausted the narrative of simple exposure or voluntary flight. They are explicitly treating the case as a probable violent crime. They're looking for a perpetrator, not just a body.
So they think she was likely abducted or met with opportunistic violence by someone operating along that isolated highway.
And they're using federal resources to try and find a behavioral match to a known offender who may have committed similar unrecognized crimes in the region.
We've had subsequent searches, too, fueled by hope and often by local rumors. In 2019, there was that basement excavation on a Route 112 property.
Right, the one that was often subject to these persistent local rumors surrounding the Moulton brothers' A-frame house. But nothing definitive was found.
That cycle of false hope must be agonizing for the family.
It's truly agonizing. Then, in 2021, bone fragments found at Loon Mountain were tested, but they were not identified as Maura's. Each time the family is brought to the brink of an answer, only to be plunged back into that uncertainty.
And finally, we have this recent shocking development, the 2025 fingerprint match.
A fingerprint found on a CD in Maura's abandoned Saturn was matched to Stephen Baldwin. He was formerly known as Stephen Finkelstein, a former West Point cadet.
The West Point connection is chilling. It links Maura's past directly to her disappearance.
And Baldwin is known to have a documented history of fraud and, disturbingly, of killing animals. So while the fingerprint could be decades old, deposited during some casual exchange of a CD...
The fact that he has a documented pattern of disturbing and violent behavior means that even a historical connection keeps him squarely in the realm of intense scrutiny.
Exactly. The print itself doesn't prove he was involved in an abduction, but his subsequent psychological profile, it raises very serious questions.
For over 2 decades, the disappearance of Maura Murray has been one of the internet's most fiercely debated true crime cases. And this vacuum of official answers, it's been aggressively filled by online speculation. Sometimes helpful, often harmful.
This case is a perfect illustration of that paradox of the social media age. While the internet interest, driven largely by her family's advocacy, has helped keep the case alive, funding searches and generating interest.
The relentless, often cruel nature of that online speculation has caused significant harm.
We've seen local witnesses, like Butch Atwood, subjected to immense public harassment and suspicion simply for being the last person to speak to her. Rumors just turn into gospel online, often with no grounding in actual police evidence.
Yet the family's ongoing fight for answers is really the central reason why this case remains active. Maura's father, Fred Murray, has been a tireless advocate.
And he's unwavering in his belief in foul play. He often suggests local police incompetence and refers to the perpetrator as a local dirtbag.
The family consistently rejects the suicide or exposure theory. They cite Maura's functioning behavior, her attempts to secure a place to stay, and crucially, her plans to return.
Evidenced by the textbooks she took with her.
Maura's sister, Julie Murray, has shouldered that public advocacy role with remarkable dedication. She launched a TikTok account that has gained over 287,000 followers.
And she started her own podcast, Media Pressure, in 2024-2025 to actively manage the narrative and keep the case in the public eye. It's got to be such a delicate balancing act, leveraging the power of social media to fund searches and generate tips, while at the same time trying to shield themselves and legitimate witnesses from all the toxic speculation it generates.
February 2025 marked the 21st anniversary with a vigil, and the family continues to have regular meetings with investigators, maintaining that pressure for a resolution.
So let's review the key competing hypotheses that dominate the discussions and try to remain impartial about the more sensational elements.
Okay, the first is the most common for missing persons in remote areas: accidental death or exposure. This theory posits that Maura, possibly intoxicated, disoriented, or maybe concussed from the crash, fled the car to evade police and simply succumbed to the cold or the elements in the dense woods.
Arguments supporting this would cite her extreme stress, the evidence of intoxication, and her overwhelming need to get away from the police because of her suspended license and probation.
Right. But the main argument against this is the total absence of remains or any of her belongings after 2 decades of advanced searches. No body, no clothing, no backpack, nothing. The second, and the family's preferred theory, is foul play or abduction. This suggests Maura accepted a ride, maybe from the person driving the ghost car SUV seen moments before police arrived.
Or that she was coerced or forcibly abducted by an opportunistic individual and met with violence.
This theory naturally leads to this intense scrutiny of local residents, often driven by intense community speculation.
We have to present the rumors surrounding local suspects impartially because they often stem from a real institutional distrust in the community.
For instance, you have the highly publicized rumors concerning Richard Sappho. He was allegedly driving a red pickup truck, a vehicle type mentioned in some early, though vague, witness accounts.
His wealthy family owned property nearby, and he was rumored to have poured concrete shortly after the disappearance, which fueled massive suspicion among the public.
But critically, while Sappho's family refused a property search requested by law enforcement, we have to remember they were legally within their rights to do so.
Absolutely. Law enforcement often lacked the probable cause needed to get a warrant to search private land, which, while it fueled public suspicion, it explains why those rumors were never officially resolved and why the investigation was hindered.
And we have to address the deeply disturbing, unsettling allegations concerning Maura's long-distance boyfriend, Billy Rausch.
Right. While he was stationed far away and had an ironclad military alibi for the night of the crash, his behavior after the disappearance has been placed under immense scrutiny.
Recent sexual abuse allegations against Rausch are just profoundly disturbing. There's one of him choking a former girlfriend and calling her Maura during the assault.
And even more alarming, he allegedly threatened another woman by saying, "I'm going to kill you like I killed Maura."
Now, while these allegations certainly show a dark pattern of behavior and extreme mental disturbance, we have to note that they do not physically place him at the scene on February 9th, 2004.
The possibility remains that the relationship turbulence was simply the final psychological trigger for her flight, or that his mental state reflects a deeper, unrelated pathology.
Ultimately, the whole mystery boils down to one fundamental gap left by that 9-minute window.
Did Maura willingly enter a vehicle, driven by someone she knew or a stranger, to escape her immediate legal trouble? Or did she flee the roadside and succumb to the elements?
The lack of remains makes the exposure theory continually difficult for many people to accept, while the shortness of that opportunity window suggests that a quick, opportunistic encounter with a local individual is frighteningly plausible.
And that enduring gap is why this case still generates such intense emotion and debate 21 years later.
It's impossible to talk about Maura Murray without reflecting on the deep sense of unease and just sorrow over the chaos that completely enveloped her life right before she disappeared.
That cascade of legal trouble, the financial debt, her sister's trauma totaling her father's car, it's the classic profile of a young person who is desperately trying to maintain perfection until that final thread just snaps.
And the tragedy is just compounded by the pain of her family. They've waited 21 years for answers, and they've been forced to navigate the treacherous waters of online speculation and investigative dead ends.
They can't achieve any kind of closure because the body of evidence, quite literally, is missing.
And despite all the rumors, all the thousands of theories generated online, the core investigative imperatives remain shockingly simple, but unresolved.
Authorities still need to definitively resolve the ghost car timeline discrepancy, the Witness A account versus the official police logs. If an unauthorized vehicle that looked like a police cruiser was there at 7:37 p.m., that changes the entire trajectory of the investigation.
And the continuing necessity of the FBI VICAP profile is the most important signal from law enforcement.
It indicates that they are treating this case as a probable violent crime, that they are searching for a pattern perpetrator. It signals that we can likely stop focusing on the simple got lost in the woods narrative and shift our attention to opportunistic predators operating along that highway corridor.
Before we leave you with our final thought, we want to remind you again to subscribe to Whispers of Crime on YouTube and to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and all the major podcast platforms.
Your support really does help us keep these cold cases in the spotlight and aids in the pursuit of answers.
So let's go back to Maura's paradoxical packing list. She faked a family death to buy herself a week of escape. She took her textbooks, indicating a plan to return to her academic life.
But she left behind critical medications and daily toiletries, suggesting she only planned to be gone for 2 days at most.
So if a young woman is desperate enough to fake a death to buy herself a week of escape, but only packs enough hygiene products for 2 days,
Does that mean she was running to a brief sanctuary? Or was she only running away from the immediate trouble, only to encounter something far, far worse?